All right, today we're going to cut through the noise and look past the headlines about the conflict in Iran. The goal here is to dig into what might really be going on, because according to our source material, the official story, well, it might not be the whole story. So what is the real endgame?
Right from the get-go, the official narrative is, let's just say, confusing. We're being told things like you have to escalate to de-escalate, and that the hard way is probably the easy way. I mean, these are statements that pretty much contradict themselves, and it creates this thick fog of uncertainty around what the actual goals are. And that confusion just begs the question, right? If the story we're being told doesn't really add up, what are we missing? What's the deeper strategy that might be unfolding behind the curtain? So, let's just dig into how all over the place the official story really has been. It's a narrative that seems to be pulling in completely opposite directions at the same time, claiming victory while also saying we need to do more.
I mean, just look at these contradictions when you put them side by side. The war is very complete, but we're not ready to leave yet. The timeline is just 4 to 5 weeks, but don't worry, we can also go far longer. And the big goal is to wind down, but we can only do that after we escalate. It's a collection of statements that makes it almost impossible to pin down a clear objective.
And this is where things get really interesting, because our source material suggests this isn't just about this one conflict. The analysis says we should probably be looking at this whole thing through a much wider historical lens.
Okay, take a look at this. The source material pulls up a kind of greatest hits of reasons for going to war, from the sinking of the USS Maine to the Gulf of Tonkin, all the way to weapons of mass in Iraq. The point the analysis makes is that each of these justifications was later shown to be, misleading or just plain false. So the big question it poses is, does the current war in Iran fit this same pattern? And according to the analysis, the official reason this time, an imminent nuclear threat from Iran, is pretty shaky. And it's not just a hunch either. The source points to people like the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, who actually resigned saying there was no imminent threat. And even the director of national intelligence testified that Iran's enrichment program was basically wiped out last year. Okay, so if the why now doesn't really hold up under scrutiny, what are the deeper reasons? Well, the source suggests the answer isn't in what happened last week, but in decades of geopolitical pressure that have been building for a long, long time.
Now, this quote from the Secretary of State is presented as a real smoking gun. The logic is kind of circular if you think about it. The U.S. had to strike Iran first to prevent Iran from striking back against a future Israeli attack. It's framed here as a quiet admission of who was really pushing for the conflict to happen.
And look, this isn't some new thing. This drum has been beaten for decades. For over 30 years, Iran has been painted as just about to get a nuclear weapon. Back in 1992, they were 3 to 5 years away. By 2012, it was down to a few weeks. The source presents this as a very long-term campaign to frame Iran as a constant, looming threat that's always just around the corner.
All right, so beyond the geopolitics, there's always another layer, right? And you know what they say, follow the money. The source argues that this conflict is incredibly profitable for some, and it fits perfectly into a bigger strategy it calls perma-war.
So what exactly is perma-war? Think of it like this. It's a war that's not really meant to end. By keeping it going, you create a constant reason for massive military budgets and for maintaining strategic control over vital choke points, like the Strait of Hormuz, by keeping the area in a state of perpetual, manufactured crisis.
And believe me, the numbers here are just mind-boggling. We're talking about another $200 billion being requested for this conflict alone, on top of an already record-breaking military budget. The source also points out that billions in emergency arms sales are being rushed to allies in the Gulf, completely bypassing any congressional oversight. It paints a picture of a massive financial win for the defense industry.
And this brings us to what the source presents as the deepest layer of all, the real endgame. The idea that this conflict isn't just about territory or regional power. It could be the trigger for a massive, seismic shift in the entire global financial system.
And here it is, the potential bombshell. An idea has apparently been floated where Iran would let oil tankers pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but with one huge condition. The oil has to be paid for not in US dollars, but in Chinese yuan. Now, this would be a direct shot at the financial system that has run the global economy for half a century.
To really get why that's such a huge deal, we have to talk about something called the petrodollar system. For 50 years, it's been the bedrock of the global economy. The deal is simple. Oil is priced in dollars. This forces every country on Earth to buy and hold U.S. dollars to buy oil, which creates constant, massive demand for U.S. currency and debt. In return, the U.S. provides military protection to the Gulf states. It's the whole reason the dollar is the world's reserve currency.
But here's the thing. According to the source, that whole system is now starting to crack. Pillar 1, pricing oil in dollars, is being directly challenged by this petro-yuan idea. And Pillar 2, U.S. military protection, is falling apart because U.S. bases in the region are now seen less as shields and more as targets that actually invite attacks. The security guarantee has become a security risk.
And the fallout from this breakdown would be, well, huge. We could see the world shifting from a system based on faith in U.S. treasuries, basically paper, to a system based on hard assets you can actually hold, like oil and gold. A shift like that would mean the end of 50 years of American economic dominance.
So we're left with this really powerful final question. Are we just watching the messy end of another regional war? Or, as the source material strongly suggests, are we actually witnessing the carefully engineered demolition of an old financial system, all to make way for a brand new global monetary order? It's a thought that reframes everything we think we know about this war.